The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty windows of Miller's roadside diner, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. It was the kind of place where the coffee was always hot and the pie was always homemade. For 30 years the diner had sat at the edge of Route 9, serving travelers and locals alike. Behind the counter stood Grace Bennett. She was 52 years old, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail and she wore her usual white button-down shirt tucked into jeans. Grace had been waitressing at Miller's for nearly 2 decades. She knew every regular by name and remembered how they took their coffee. On this particular Saturday the diner was busier than usual. A motorcycle rally was passing through town and the parking lot had filled with gleaming bikes. Grace didn't mind. She'd served all kinds of folks over the years. Bikers and bankers, truck drivers and teachers. She treated everyone the same, with a warm smile and genuine care. A group of about 15 bikers had taken up most of the tables near the back. They were a mix of ages, with weathered faces and worn leather jackets. Most were friendly enough, ordering burgers and fries and chatting among themselves. But one man stood out from the rest. His name was Marcus Webb, though everyone called him Bull. He was a large man in his late 40s with arms covered in intricate tattoos. His leather vest had seen better days and his expression was hard. While the others laughed and joked, Bull sat apart, nursing a cup of black coffee and watching everything with suspicious eyes. Grace had noticed him when they first arrived. There was something about the way he held himself. A tension, a guardedness. She'd seen that look before in people who'd been hurt by life. People who'd built walls to protect themselves. She approached his table with the coffee pot. "Can I warm that up for you?" Bull looked up at her, his jaw tight. "Sure." Grace poured carefully, noting how his hands gripped the mug a little too firmly. "You folks heading somewhere special?" "Just riding," he said curtly, not meeting her eyes. "Well, it's a beautiful day for it," Grace replied gently. She didn't push. Some people needed space and she respected that. As the afternoon wore on, the diner remained packed. Grace moved efficiently between tables, balancing plates and refilling drinks. Her feet ached, but she kept her smile steady. This was more than just a job to her. It was how she connected with the world. How she made a small difference in people's days. She was carrying a tray of food to a family near the window when it happened. One of the bikers, a younger man with too much energy and not enough sense, stood up quickly to tell a story. His arm swung wide, catching Grace's shoulder just as she passed. The tray tilted. Grace tried to steady it, but hot coffee splashed across her chest. She gasped at the sudden burn, stumbling backward. The tray clattered to the floor, plates shattering in a spectacular crash that silenced the entire diner. Before Grace could even process what had happened, she felt hands on her shirt. Rough hands gripping the fabric at her collar. It was Bull. He'd moved faster than she would have thought possible for a man his size. With one swift motion he ripped open her white shirt. Buttons scattered across the floor. The fabric tore with a sound that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. Grace stood frozen, her shirt hanging open, revealing her simple cotton camisole underneath. But that wasn't what made the whole bar go completely still. There on her chest, just above her heart, was a tattoo. It was the eagle, globe and anchor. The unmistakable emblem of the United States Marine Corps. Bull stared at it, his face transformed. The hardness melted away, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. His hands, which had been so rough a moment before, began to tremble. "You served," he whispered. It wasn't a question. Grace's hand instinctively went to the tattoo. For a moment she was somewhere else entirely. She was 22 years old again, standing proudly in her dress blues. She was deploying overseas, leaving behind her family and everything familiar. She was holding the hand of her fellow Marine Sarah Chen as she took her last breaths on a dusty road halfway around the world. 4 years, Grace said quietly. Long time ago now. The diner remained silent. Everyone was watching, but the moment felt private somehow. Sacred. Bull's eyes were wet. "I burned my chest in an IED explosion," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 17 years ago in Fallujah. I thought the coffee had burned you. I just wanted to get the hot fabric away from your skin before it could scar you like it did me." Understanding washed over Grace. This man, who looked so intimidating, so hardened by life, had acted purely on instinct. He'd seen someone in pain and moved to help without a second thought for how it might look. "Thank you," she said, reaching out to touch his arm gently. That was kind of you. Something broke in Bull then. This big intimidating man with his leather and tattoos and tough exterior started to cry. Not quiet tears but deep shaking sobs that came from somewhere old and wounded inside him. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I just couldn't let you get hurt. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing again. Grace understood immediately. This wasn't really about the coffee. This was about all the times he hadn't been able to help. All the brothers and sisters he'd lost. All the wounds that never really healed no matter how many years passed. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around this stranger. This fellow veteran who carried his own invisible scars. It's okay, she murmured. You did good. You helped me. You did exactly the right thing. Bull held onto her like she was a lifeline. Around them the other bikers had gotten to their feet. They circled around their friend creating a protective barrier. Several of them had tears in their own eyes. An older biker with gray in his beard spoke up. Most of us here are vets, he explained to the watching crowd. We ride together because we understand things about each other that civilians sometimes can't. Bull here he's had it rough. Lost a lot of good people. Blames himself for things that weren't his fault. Grace pulled back just enough to look up at Bull. Listen to me, she said firmly. You are not responsible for every bad thing that happened over there. You did your duty. You survived. That's enough. That has to be enough. But Sarah didn't survive, Bull said. Corporal Sarah Chen. I was supposed to check that vehicle. I was supposed to clear it. But I was tired and I let her go instead. The bomb that went off should have killed me. Grace felt her heart stop. Sarah Chen, she repeated slowly. From Sacramento. Loved terrible action movies and could quote every line from Predator. Bull's eyes widened. You knew her. She was my best friend, Grace whispered. We served together. She was killed 3 months before I finished my tour. I got this tattoo the day after her funeral to honor her. To honor all of us who served. The coincidence was impossible, overwhelming. Out of all the diners in all the towns this man who blamed himself for her friend's death had walked into hers. Sarah wouldn't want you carrying this guilt, Grace said, her voice steady despite her own tears. I knew her better than almost anyone and I can tell you with absolute certainty that she wouldn't blame you. She was a Marine. She knew the risks. She chose to serve just like we all did. Bull shook his head. But if I had just done my job, then maybe you'd be dead instead and she'd be standing here carrying the same guilt, Grace interrupted gently. Don't you see? There's no winning that game. You can torture yourself forever with what ifs or you can choose to honor her memory by living a life she'd be proud of. She took both of his hands in hers. Sarah loved to help people. She volunteered at animal shelters and visited nursing homes. She sent half her paycheck home to her mom. Every single time. And today when you thought I was hurt you didn't hesitate. You moved to help me just like she would have done. That's how you honor her. By being the kind of person who acts when others need help. Bull was crying again but differently now. These were tears of release. Of a burden finally being shared and lightened. The owner of the diner, Tom Miller, came out from the kitchen. He'd been watching the whole thing. Grace, take the rest of the day off with pay. You okay? You need anything? I'm fine, Tom. Really? Just need a new shirt. One of the female bikers stepped forward, pulling off her own denim jacket. Here, wear this. Grace accepted it gratefully, slipping it on over her torn shirt. It smelled like leather and freedom and the open road. The diner slowly came back to life. People returned to their meals though the atmosphere had changed. It was softer somehow, more connected. Bull and his group stayed for another hour. They talked with Grace about Sarah, sharing memories and stories. Laughing and crying in equal measure. It turned out Bull had kept a photo of his whole unit in his wallet all these years. There was Sarah, young and smiling and strong. There was Bull himself, barely recognizable under all the youth and hope. When it was finally time for them to leave, Bull pulled Grace aside. I don't know if I believe in fate or God or anything like that anymore. But I'm glad I walked into your diner today. I'm glad I met you. Me too, Grace said honestly. You gave me something too, you know. A connection to Sarah. A new story about her. That's a gift. Bull reached into his pocket and pulled out a small medallion. It was a Marine Corps Challenge coin, worn smooth from years of being carried. My commanding officer gave me this after I got out of the hospital. I've carried it every day since. But I think Sarah would want you to have it now. Grace tried to protest, but Bull pressed it into her palm, closing her fingers around it. Please, let me do this. Let me give you something to remember that some good came from today. Grace nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. As the bikers filed out, several stopped to hug Grace or shake her hand. The young one who'd caused the accident in the first place apologized profusely. Grace waved it off. These things happen. No harm done. Through the window she watched them mount their motorcycles. Bull climbed onto a big Harley, and for just a moment before he put on his helmet he smiled. A real genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Grace stood there long after they'd ridden away, the challenge coin warm in her hand. Around her the diner buzzed with conversation. She knew this story would be told and retold. How the biker had ripped the waitress's shirt. How everyone had gasped. How the truth had been revealed. But for Grace the real story was simpler. It was about two people who'd served their country and lost someone they loved. It was about carrying guilt and finding unexpected forgiveness. It was about how sometimes the people who look the most intimidating are the ones with the gentlest hearts. She touched the tattoo over her heart. The same heart that still beat strong all these years later. Thank you, Sarah, she whispered. For bringing him here today. For helping him heal. For reminding me why I got this tattoo in the first place. Tom called from the kitchen that the next order was up. Grace pocketed the medallion, straightened the borrowed jacket, and got back to work. There were people to serve. Coffee to pour. Small kindnesses to offer. And that she thought slipping the challenge coin into her pocket where she could feel its weight against her leg was exactly how you honored the fallen. By living with purpose. By helping others. By ripping open shirts if you had to in order to prevent someone from getting hurt. By choosing love over fear. Connection over isolation. Grace over judgment. Every single day. That was the real story. And it was enough.